Brian, how did you find carnivore?
Well, it goes back about 5.5 years ago now. Basically, I'd completed a trip with some friends around the South Island of New Zealand in February 2020, which was an interesting year. And we've been hearing about lovely viruses overseas and things. And I think because of my age, after I got back from the trip, my doctor basically just did some blood tests. I think, 57 at the time. And that seemed to reveal that I was diagnosed pre-diabetic with an HbA1c of 43, which is what, 6.1 in the other units. I was, 105 kilos, 230 pounds, and I'm 1.73 meters tall, 5'8", roughly, I think. And I was in a relatively fortunate situation because the first New Zealand lockdown related to the virus happened just after that. So I was able to do some research, purge my pantry of everything inappropriate, and start learning how to manage things. I love information, so I basically did buy a breath ketone meter, and I was doing finger prick blood tests with a glucose meter and recording everything, all of the food I ate, etc. And my inspiration for most of it was from YouTube channels such as Low Carb Down Under, Dr. Paul Mason, and Professor Bart Kay, of course, and Dr. Anthony Chafee, Jason Fung, Sean Baker, and unfortunately the late, great Sarah Hellberg. What a pity. Yeah, and I believe I worked out a sensible approach that seemed to work for me. I had some minor issues fluctuating between uh, slight diarrhea or slight constipation until I figured out how much salt I should actually eat and how much fat, the normal thing people run into. So I managed to shed, what was it, 25 kilos or 55 pounds in a matter of about 2 to 3 months. And for the last about 4 years, my HbA1c has been 33 or 5.2 in the other units. My weight has been stable for more than 4 years. But it's amazing when you go through life how many conditions you have that you don't realize you have. I mean, I was obese. Basically, was my list of things. Yeah, basically obese, joint pain, um, fingertip tingling neuropathy that I didn't really understand, but made me wonder, oh, do I have a heart issue? Uh, Brain fog was an important thing, and depression, which I now, only after having eliminated them, can I see were there. And other things that you start to just accept as normal for your age. But before I started this, it was gain a kilo a year for 20 years, or a couple of pounds a year. But when you start to believe that things like progressive erectile dysfunction are just a normal part of aging and go from fully functional to over 10 or 15 years non-functional, and then change your diet and a year into it suddenly realize, hey, that situation's entirely reversed. I mean, who wouldn't want a situation like that to reverse? But I don't think I've heard anyone on your channel or others mention the subject. It seems to be something guys just don't talk about. Uh,
Yeah, it's something like that as well. Something that is so like it's part of your person, right? It's like it's your self-image, right? And for that to come back, that's amazing.
Yeah, and it makes sense to me from the um, biochemical and physiological means, as far as it's all based, I understand, on hormonal, vascular, and nitric oxide within your body. And all of those things can be disrupted through a poor metabolism and garbage diet. So, yeah, I can see why things that you would not expect to reverse can reverse. I, of course, through watching so many of your videos, have seen so many conditions I've never heard of being mentioned by people that they've completely eliminated or drastically improved. And it's, oh, it's so heartwarming, really. Yeah, the entire information I got from the New Zealand um, doctor was a 2004 vintage, poorly photocopied pamphlet implying that you might be able to delay type 2 diabetes if you're pre diabetic. They did at least update it to one saying that 80% of diabetes may be preventable. I'm hoping that the next one says reversible. That's the wording. That would be
I
nice.
I I guess, are they still recommending healthy whole grains to do it?
Oh, I at least they in the latest one they don't seem to mention a recommended diet, which is at least a good thing. In the previous one, it's oh yes, the healthy grains and cut the fats and oh watch those animal fats. We're seeing things like my oral health, my tooth health is incredibly improved. I'd gone through a bad run of decay from just having, I think, poor teeth as a child, really, and had a couple of implants and multiple crowns and was having continuous issues with gums bleeding. But I certainly don't have that problem now on carnivore. I began keto for something like a year and a half and then transitioned to full carnivore. I
So
still
what
have,
was it that made you do the, like, transition over? Was it listening to someone like Bart Kay or
well, it was listening, yeah, listening to everyone, but being skeptical as to whether I should. Because after so many decades of being hounded with misinformation, you're very skeptical as to whether what you're hearing is a cult or reality. And from my ketogenic diet that I've gained so much benefit from, I figured out by progressively just removing one thing at a time and thinking, no, I don't need that, etc. And I do okay on dairy, which is a good thing for me. It just migrated day by day, week by week, until there were no plants. I think the last, well, non-animal thing I used to eat regularly would be actually mushrooms as part of my breakfast. But I don't know, they can be a pain to cook. And they, well, even though they did soak up the bacon fat, which was nice, but they weren't necessary. The eggs do a good job of that. My diet basically consists of um, it used to be bacon and eggs for breakfast, but now it's just a lamb chop and eggs most of the time, and a dry aged steak for dinner, courtesy of the advice of Anthony Chafee. So
Wow, so you're doing 2 meals a day?
for me, it seems to work best. The timing, yeah, the timing works because you've got to follow your gut feeling. When you wake, if you actually do feel hungry, I think it's appropriate to eat something. Some days I get up late and the feeling just disappears. I don't have that need. Yeah, I'm not entirely 100% clean carnivore. I still do black coffee and low carb beer. We can't give everything up all at once. Uh, um, yeah. Also, yeah. Shout out to semi-retired Bob. I'm very similar in age to him. I think I'm 6 months younger, and I've enjoyed watching his progress in his walks.
Yeah. Um, so you you're no longer diabetic, you're not pre-diabetic. Um,
Hmm.
has your doctor kind of said, "Well, we need to get the newspapers onto this. This is amazing." What
If only we lived in a world like that. Yeah. The only comment there has been is, of course, when it comes to the lipid panel. Yeah, and I've learned some interesting things, I believe. My typical um, cholesterol level was around 5 going back 15, 20 years, and it slowly crept up through keto and went up a little bit more through carnivore to the point where I'm typically running 6.5 to 7.5.
that's your total cholesterol?
Yeah, total. Yeah. Um, but when I got a lipid panel done after, I think it was 48 more hours fasted, it was up to 8.4, which is, of course, exactly what you'd expect. But speaking to other people around um, my community and just general people I encounter, asking them about how they get their lipid panel even done. None of them are even fasted. So how can they compare one test with the next? It's always under completely varying conditions. Not that any of it matters anyway. My triglycerides are way down at like zero point 0.6 or something, and my HDL's double the, I think, New Zealand recommended minimum. So who cares?
But, so, has your doctor pushed back? Has he been trying to put you on a statin or something?
Well, no, not yet. But I think the doctors can be a bit lazy. I think I've once had a nurse from the clinic phone me, but every 6 months, I believe it is, they send me for another test and make notes, but never speak to me or anything, which is, I don't know, from my point of view, quite good. Who wants to be hounded by them trying to push medication?
Yeah. So you're feeling good, everything's improving.
Hmm.
Has has anyone around you noticed the difference in you and asked
Oh,
what you're doing?
most definitely. And I have an insulin injecting diabetic brother, type 2, and I encouraged him to get onto continuous glucose monitors. And he's been experimenting quite a lot over the last 12 months and uh, has significantly reduced his insulin intake to the point where he can't really practically take fast acting insulin. He can only take the slow response. He recently tried taking none, and he was not entirely happy with where he was sitting, although he was never suffering any wild swings where he could have any chronic lows or anything, but he just wasn't comfortable. And so it might be for him, he's got to always stay on a little bit. And that's perfectly fine. And I've got an uncle who's also diabetic for like 20 odd years, and he's listened to what I've said, and I believe he's made improvements for himself. But at least he's openly discussing such things. And he used two um, continuous glucose monitors that I donated to him and found it very interesting. So I'm trying to do my bit, and I think a 0% vegan shirt does help. Yeah.
Nice. So, like, is it easy enough to get a glucose monitor in New Zealand? I've heard in some countries, like, it's very, very difficult to get hold of them.
Well, even though New Zealand's one of those weird countries where you're allowed to advertise drugs, like the US, they don't restrict like the US. I can just mail order some continuous glucose monitors, and that's what I did for my brother, myself, and my uncle. I think I think they're about $100 each, and they lasted 2 weeks. It wasn't too bad from my perspective, anyway.
Yeah. I mean, this is the glucose monitor is really the key for most people because once you see what the food's actually doing to your body, it's like, okay, now I can manage things. Now I understand what's going on.
Mm.
You know, before you're flying blind and listening to people talk about the food pyramid, it's kind of, it doesn't help at all.
Yeah, no one wants to do like 40 finger pricks a day to try and actually map their own curve. No, that's impractical. So yeah, and if everyone was effectively given the opportunity to wear one, I think they'd be absolutely shocked by what they discovered every time they ate. But unfortunately, we don't live in that world. I
Well,
do do
it's
some.
kind of inconvenient for all like big food and big pharma for you to actually know what's going on, right?
Well, okay, they'll be adaptable and they'll find new ways to make more money, I'm sure. I don't think they'll go bankrupt just yet. But I do some exercise, which I couldn't easily do to the same degree while I was basically an obese, well, unfit specimen with joint pain, probably some form of arthritis beginning, etc. My exercise is walking. I will happily throw on my music or my podcasts and YouTube channel streaming and wander for, well, it's generally around 2 hours to 3 hours, depending on the day. So, yeah, I do quite a few kilometers or miles per trip, and it's not hard on my body. I don't wish to run. Some people, I don't know, thrive on running. No, that's not for me.
Yeah, walking's good, you know, and when you're walking, it's good, of course, listening time, but it's also good thinking time.
Yeah, basically mental health time, just to unwind and enjoy, just simply being. Yeah, and just relax. We don't do enough relaxing. That's for sure.
Mm.
We're so
Ha-
stressed in our modern life.
Yeah, when it comes to mental health, how has your sleep been since you started eating this way?
I find I need less sleep, but it definitely is better quality sleep. It's never really been an issue for me. Sleep though, it's I've got into bad habits of using a device to watch a video or two before going to sleep, which is probably something I should get out of as a habit. But if it hasn't obviously disrupted my sleep to the point of causing problems, then I'm probably not going to bother changing my habits. We like our entertainment, don't we?
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, if you're getting better quality sleep, even if it's less, I mean, that's probably a good thing. Um, yeah. So you've improved all these things, and you're actually helping some family members as well.
I will always try to do my bit for those around me where I can. But lately, I've had a lot thrust at me as far as my mother's in late stage dementia, and probably not going to last out the year. And her husband's in a retirement village, getting used to the concept of not being around her the same, etc., and managing those affairs. I think before carnivore, my mental health would have just exploded. My brain, I wouldn't have been able to cope. But I found myself so calm in dealing with whatever's been thrust at me. That is, I think, what I've gained the most, other than basically potentially living longer or having a better health span. I think the mind is the only thing you actually possess. Anything else is just an appendage. And I don't want to end up like my mother. There does seem to be a theme of dementia, mainly in the female side of my mother's side of the family. But have been other mental health issues on my father's side of the family, as far as schizophrenia, and there was also diabetes and cancer and all the other things associated with basic, well, the the generation they were from. They Those born in the 1930s onwards had a lifestyle that they probably didn't expect to give them health problems, and they came from an era where people probably didn't make it to the age of 70 anyway. We're in a different world now where we live potentially a lot longer, but in what sort of lifestyle if we're sitting in a chair, basically barely able to do anything other than dribble? That's not living. If food and a few other simple things about your life can drastically alter that outcome, then why wouldn't you consider making changes?
Definitely. Um, yeah, I mean, I don't wanna live to 80 or 90, being in a home and unable to look after myself, It's the quality that's the important thing, right?
Yeah, when I look around that dementia ward when I'm up visiting my mother, it all, for each individual, it manifests in a different way, but it's just so catastrophic. And when I see what they feed them, I find it rather depressing. But I know by the time they've got to that stage, it's probably not going to make the slightest bit of difference. The 20 or 30 years beforehand may have actually been the time to intervene.
This is why it's so important that we know this stuff, that what impact food can have on our brain as early as possible, right? It's like, for me, and I think a lot of the people I speak to feel very lucky to have found this when we did, rather than, in finding out way too late.
Yeah, a friend of mine basically has had a bit of a nasty run. He's 1 year younger than me and basically diabetic, had a hip replacement, had prostate cancer, then had a throat cancer, and he's managed to get through all of that. But I wonder what proportion of those conditions were potentially preventable. His father was diabetic, and eventually, unfortunately, a bowl of porridge choked him. So that was, yeah, dementia and diabetes in his father's case. So I hope he doesn't end up going down the same path. But once again, people will not do anything that they're not willing to do. I can only try to provide some form of example and see what happens.
So, related to how you're eating, when you're buying meat, is it expensive in New Zealand for, like, meat and eggs?
Well, eggs work out at, I think it's about $1.50 each. But I don't care about that. But steak and lamb, yeah, there is a bit of a problem because they have gone up in price quite a lot reasonably lately in New Zealand. But they do tend to have specials, and I did buy a small freezer, and I tend to buy it whenever it's on special at about $500 worth a batch. And when I sit down to think about it, I think I'm probably not spending any more money than I would if I was eating a normal diet because of the amount of wastage of all the salads and fruits and vegetables, etc., that no one really eats. I have a food scrap bin now supplied by the local council, and it generally takes me weeks to fill it up, and it's basically only eggshells and bones.
Yeah, whereas if you were doing the salads and cooking the veggies and whatever, it'd be full once a week, right?
Exactly.
Mm.
Yeah, it's just amazing, really, how much you don't throw out that you considered normal.
So this is one of the things that I noticed about kind of vegan or vegetarian versus carnivore, or even a regular diet versus carnivore, is like how much waste there is. It's like there's so much preparation, there's cutting and chopping and all that kind of thing, but then there's all this waste. You're throwing away all this plastic that all the vegetables are wrapped in, all the this, that, the other. You're throwing away vegetables because they're gone over time, they're out of date, and it, you just you're not really using all that much of what you buy.
No. Yeah, one of my friends, her parents are both vegetarian, and she's a vegetarian naturopath and school dental nurse in her training. And I had some incredibly interesting discussions with her, and she does actually keep regularly sending me information from various seminars and um, things she's attended. And a lot of them do actually mention the low carb approach to things, which I find quite interesting. She, her family and her genetics, she seems to do absolutely fine on predominantly plant based. She is probably, was it pescatarian? She eats fish, does eat fish, but not a lot of fish. So at least she's not suffering the complications of veganism. But for her, it works as a vegetarian. Yes. And through some of her influence, I explored partially going down that path. As a child, was never really given lots of red meat. We couldn't really afford it. And so I never really developed a taste for it until quite recently, really. It was basically chicken. And when I look at the chicken in supermarkets now, I'm absolutely disgusted. There's almost none that has any skin left on it. They've taken the skin off to protect your health. Oh no, they can't possibly let you have any fat. Crazy world we live in.
Yeah, one thing I noticed the last time I was in Australia is if you go into the supermarket and you're just looking for some mince, some ground beef, you go to that section and you'll find that if you go late enough in the day, all the low fat stuff has sold out. And then on a bottom shelf somewhere is like the higher fat version of the mince. And it's like uh, really like everyone's like we've been brainwashed so much that everyone believes like, oh, I can't touch that high fat stuff.
Yeah, I think I've only been able to find typically around 20% fat mince. there doesn't seem to be anything higher in the mainstream supermarkets, which disappoints me. But yeah, I've experienced exactly that. There's so much low fat mince. It's got to be so good for you. Yeah. Ah, yes, insanity. But one day, hopefully, we will have learnt as a society and a species what's appropriate for our species.
Yeah. So, you mentioned before regarding your weight loss, you lost about 25 kilos. So you're sitting around 80 kilos now.
Uh, yeah, I've come up about 3 or 4 kilos from where I um, initially reached. So I'm sitting at 80, 84 and a bit this morning, according to my scales. I have slowly shed about 2 kilos since winter, and it's happened as soon as the days got longer. We've just had the transition to from daylight into daylight saving, and somehow mysteriously my scales have dropped. So I consider that must be natural based on the length of the day having changed.
So if a friend came to you, Brian, and said, "Okay, I'm willing to try carnivore for 90 days. What should I do?" What advice or tips would you give them to kind of see them through that 90 days?
Well, if they're on the standard garbage diet, then I'd say, hey, yeah, do it slowly. You've got to potentially um, not run into problems that will put you off. But if somebody's already been relatively low carb and can simply just replace breakfast, for instance, with bacon and eggs, while still maintaining their evening meal for a while, and then progressively move to both meals being carnivore, and make sure they add adequate butter or fat and salt, etc., to ensure no problems, then yeah, I can't see that they could have major problems if they listen to their body and basically eat enough, which is the problem that most people have, isn't it? They undereat initially because they're probably coming from a weight loss perspective, and they think if I eat lots of food until I'm actually comfortably stuffed, to use Ken Berry's line, I believe, they're yeah, they believe they'll gain weight. It does sound insane to think that more fat will help you lose fat. We've been, I don't know, driven insane with dogma for years. But it's yeah, somebody wanting to change their diet and being willing to make some changes, and they've got to figure out what suits their taste, and they can progress through. If they don't like bacon, then hey, maybe they love omelets. Maybe they can start off with their transition into carnivore being omelet based breakfasts, and then the meat of their choice, along with basically, well, I found actually balsamic vinegar on anything that was a leafy green when I was eating them was the best kind of dressing rather than the garbage seed oil dressings you'd buy in the supermarket. Uh, yeah, it's very hard to know what each individual will thrive on and not reject while they're trying to change things. I mean, changing someone's mind is difficult, changing their habits is also very difficult. But leading by example and having people get used to the fact that not eating fruit, not eating bags of nuts, not eating potato chips is actually normal. We didn't basically evolve eating potato chips and going to drive-throughs to pick up burgers. These are aberrations that have crept in within reason only in the last century. how could we go so wrong in the last 100 years? Going from the introduction of seed oils, because what else do you do with this stuff that, well, we don't really want to use for lubricating machines anymore, and it kind of looks a little bit like lard. Yeah, we'll just serve it to people. They won't know the difference.
It's kind of scary how we've normalized so much in the last 100 years and how it's just become, well, we've always done this.
And I think that what worries me the most is the next generations, the kids I see around. When I was a kid at school, there were basically no fat kids in the class. Everyone was skinny. You have a look at the school photos nowadays of kids the same age, and it's a horror story. There are still some that manage to stay slim, but it's certainly not the majority.
So, Brian, if people want to reach out to you, how can they get in contact? Do you have any social media?
I did mention to you about my app regarding a simulation of the Randall cycle. And I find information when it's presented like this diagram shows one thing, and this diagram shows the other side of the coin, that people find that information hard to understand. And I like the concept of something visual, interactive that you can mess with and actually see what happens when you do things. I don't claim it to be accurate in any way, shape, or form. It just happens to be freely out there on app stores for Apple and Android. I printed it both ways to make sure it could be read. If anyone's interested in the Randall cycle and wanting to understand it better, try downloading it, installing it, having a play. If it doesn't suit you, delete it.
I'll link to the App Store and the Google Play Store in the show notes so that people can download it and have a look at it. Um, Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story, Brian. I really appreciate your
Oh,
time.
no problem. Just keep up the good work. It's been so interesting seeing so many different stories from so many people in so many different sets of circumstances. And they're all gaining amazing benefits.